Hello, this is a loan acceptance problem using a pretty sophisticated if-then function. It's going to use a nested if-then using AND operator and also a nested if-then using an OR operator. It's divided into three parts. We see part 1 down here, part 2, and part 3, which is a comparison of part 1 and part 2. Let me explain a little bit about what this problem is. Past due. Is it good to have past due accounts? Absolutely not. Imagine if you didn't pay your bills. What if you didn't pay half of your bills? That's 50%. What if you didn't pay 60%? What if you didn't pay 90% of your bills? Do you think a bank is going to make you a loan? I don't think so. Let's look at credit score. You know, later on when you get a job and you get credit, you're going to have credit scores that are attributed to how well you're paying your bills too. It just happens to be that my credit score right now is 758, which is excellent. And I got that through Credit Karma. So these credit scores are pretty realistic. And the higher your score, the better. What about loan to value? What does loan to value ratio actually represent? Well, if I have a car that I bought and I have, let me see, it's a $20,000 car and I put $10,000 down, my loan to value ratio would be 50%. In other words, 50% is tied up in a loan. The other 50% is tied up in the value. So the higher your loan to value ratio, the less money you actually have invested in the item that you're purchasing. So in this particular case, we have down here, if the current loan to value ratio is less than 0.94, then accept the loan. That's very, very liberal. Okay, enough with explaining a little bit about the data here. Let's do part 1. Part 1 says if the percent past due is less than 50%, then the bank's going to actually make you the loan. Okay, so what I'm going to do here is just select this 50%. Here it is, past due 50%, and I'm going to move that up above the past due account so we can refer to it. Now I'm going to right click column C and insert a column, and right here in this block, and I'm going to just make it yellow, this is where I want the initial if-then statement or function to come in. So what I'm going to do is go up and actually click the FX, which is the function wizard or insert function dialog box, and I'm going to actually try to see if I can pick if. So find the if statement and then say OK. And what we're going to do here is we're going to use this function arguments dialog box. So it says if the percent past due is less than 50%, then accept the loan. So if this particular percent is less than this percent here, which is our criteria, then we're going to accept the loan. Now, what I have to do is, if I'm going to be copying this down, this formula down, we have what's called relative references and fixed references. What we have to do is make sure that when we are copying this down, that this is stabilized and it doesn't move. Therefore, what I'm going to do is click right in between the B and the 1 and hit my F4, which is a function key, and as you can see, it puts $signs in. That fixes this particular percentage, so that if I do copy the formula down, it's not going to change. It's not going to actually be pulled down with the other formula. So anyway, if this is true, okay, it's not true, but if it were, we would say yes. So I'm going to type in here yes. That's what it's going to return. If it's not true, it's going to return no. So as you can see, and now you might want to put the quotation marks in here, but I think it puts them in there automatically for you. But anyway, we have this filled in and we say, okay. And of course it comes out, no, this is not true. 60% is certainly not less than 50%. Now what I can do is tighten this column up a little bit. I can actually double click it, but I think it's a little bit too narrow, but I'm going to actually just tighten it up like this, pull it a little bit between those rows or those columns. And then what I'm going to do is grab the fill handle. The fill handle's located in the lower right hand corner. And there's two ways of doing this. You can double click on it, okay? Or you can actually push down on your mouse and drag this down. And then of course we get our yeses and nos. So it looks at this point, we only have one loan that's going to be okayed. This is where we're going to jump in and then go to part 2, which says if there is a no in this column, we still can get the opportunity to get what? A loan. So part 2 says if the credit score is greater than 572, and if the loan to value ratio is actually less than 9.4, and there is a no in this column, we can still get a loan. So what I'm going to do is let's work with that formula and how it would look like. So we're going to be using these two criteria here. And this is where I want that formula to come in. Okay. So I'm going to color that in yellow again. And we're going to work it slightly different. But of course, this is where I want that formula to come in. And I'm going to click the FX, which is Insert Function dialog box. Now, of course, if this gets in the way, you can drag and pull it out of the way by the title bar. And I'm going to put it right over here. And we're going to say, OK. So again, I'll have to pull this out of the way a little bit. And the logical test is up in here. We're actually going to be sort of adding something in here before we can fill in this part. And what we're going to be doing is using an AND statement. So I'm going to click right between those parentheses and type in the word AND. And then we're going to have to start a new sort of section of this function. So I'm going to open up a parentheses here. And when I do that, you'll see that we do have logical 1 and logical 2. These are where we can put our arguments in here. So first of all, we have to see whether or not there is a no over here, right? So if there is a no, then we can use this criteria, the credit score and the loan to value ratio. So what I'm going to do here is click in here, logical 1, and the first criteria is going to be if C3 equals no. Now I will have to put in the quotations. Then we can determine whether or not the credit score and the loan to value ratio criteria are going to be used. So the next criteria, I'm going to click in logical 2. So the logical 2 criteria is going to be if this cell here, okay, is what? It's greater than this figure here, we will have a good credit score, and that's going to come out to maybe say yes, but we're still not there yet because we got to get the loan to value ratio straightened out. So the loan to value ratio is going to be our next criteria. Now, since we are getting that from over here, I do have to stabilize that, and I'm going to hit my F4 key again and put dollar signs on that so that doesn't move when we copy down that reference. So make sure you do that. Okay, so the next criteria is going to be the loan to value ratio. So what I'm going to do is make sure that I'm clicked into the logical 3 argument, and what that's going to be this cell here. So what I'm going to do is to click that cell, and if that is less than the loan to value ratio of 0.94. And again, I'm going to have to stabilize this, so I'm going to have to use the F4 function key. And we can see up here that we have 3 different criteria. We have this column has to be no, then D3 is greater than $B $12, and then E3 is less than $B $13, which is this over here. And then what we have to do is actually put a comma up here. And by putting a comma there, I can actually type in the criteria. You can type it in here, or you can actually type it in up here. So we can actually say, if it is, then give us yes. If it's no, then give us no. And we might have to put those quotations on there. And then we're going to just click OK. And we can see that, okay, 577, that's a pretty good credit rating. And we have 0.65, which is actually less than the 0.94. And what I'm going to do is just pull this down. So it looks like we have a yes for Eddie. We have a yes for Bill. We have a yes for Ted. And then we have 2 people that are going to be turned down. They have a no here, no here, no here, no here. So if there are any yeses, what we're going to do is we're going to compare this column C and column F and put another if-then statement in here, which is part 3. Compare the yeses. And we're going to use the OR function. So, just like we did with the AND, this is actually where we want the formulas to come in at. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually color this in, and this is going to be our solution right here. So in essence, this is going to be the approved Alt-Enter loans. Approved loans are going to be in here. All right. So I'm going to do an if-then again. F of x, we do if, come into here. Now I'm going to go up into here and we're going to be using the OR. So I got to click between the 2 parentheses, type in OR, start a new open parentheses, the logical test. The logical test is going to be number 1. I'm going to click down into here. If this cell equals, open quotes, yes, then give me a yes. Okay. The next one's going to be if this particular cell here is yes, give me a yes. So we have those each covered here, and what I would do is put in a comma here right after the parentheses, and here's where we're going to put in the actual arguments, which is going to be what's returned. Yes, and if there are no yeses, give me a no. So we're comparing the yeses and nos in each of the column, and as long as there's a yes in there, we're going to get a yes. So we're saying okay. And basically, if we take this and pull it down, these are all the people that are going to be actually getting the loan. Eddie, John, Nancy will not be getting a loan. She has no yeses in either of the columns. Bill will be getting a loan. Ted will be getting a loan. And Kathy and Brian are out of luck. So that's it. Thank you.